The youngest captain, the void of space was quiet, almost peaceful. But everyone on the human fleet knew the silence was a lie. The enemy was coming. Their sensors were screaming warnings, and the fleet was already shaking in fear. On the bridge of the human warship Valor's Light, a young woman stood at the captain's chair, her hands gripping the steel armrest so hard that her knuckles had turned white. She was Captain Alara Vey, barely 23 years old, the youngest captain in human fleet history, and tonight she was the one who had to lead them. Many had whispered that she was only here because the older captains had died in the last war. Others believed she was a mistake, too young, too untested, but now, as the fleet drifted in the dark, all eyes turned to her. She was the only one giving orders, the only one who dared to speak with strength. "Status report," she demanded, her voice firm. The crew snapped to attention, their fear hiding under the weight of her words. "Shields are at full," her first officer replied, "but the enemy numbers. Captain, they outnumber us 5-1. For a moment the silence returned, 5-1. No human fleet had ever survived odds like this. Her crew looked at her, expecting the order to retreat. Instead, Ilara stepped forward, her eyes locked on the stars. "If we run," she said, her voice low but sharp, "we give them Earth. We give them our families. We give them everything. That is something we will not do." The bridge stiffened. Her words cut through the fear like fire through dry wood. In that instant, the crew believed her more than they believed themselves, but deep inside, Ilara felt the weight. She had trained her whole life, raised in the academies. Her father had been a war hero, her mother a fleet strategist. She had studied tactics when other children played games. She had memorized battle maps instead of songs, and now, here she stood, carrying the future of humanity in her hands. The sensors beeped louder. The alien fleet had arrived. Dozens of massive warships sliding into the dark like blades, their hulls glowing with strange symbols. The enemy commander sent a transmission, a cold voice dripping with mockery. "Human fleet, surrender or be erased." The message echoed across every channel. Even the strongest human officers felt a chill run through their bones. But Ilara leaned forward and answered, her voice steady. "This is Captain Alara Vey of the human fleet. We will not surrender, we will not kneel." There was silence, then cruel laughter from the alien side. "Child," the enemy commander hissed, "you should be home, not here. Your fleet will die, and you will die last." Her crew looked to her, some expecting fear. But she smiled. Just a thin, sharp smile. "They think we are weak," she said softly. "Let us prove them wrong." She raised her hand. "All ships, battle formation Delta, forward shields high, weapons charged." The fleet moved, dozens of ships sliding into formation, their engines burning bright in the dark. The youngest captain in history now commanded the oldest dream of humanity, freedom. Her heart pounded. She was scared, of course she was scared, but fear was a weapon too, and she would wield it, not against her crew, but against the enemy who thought her weak. The stars lit up. The first barrage came from the aliens, red beams slicing through the void. Human shields shuddered under the assault, sparks flying across the bridge. The crew gasped. Some flinched, but Ilara stood firm. "Return fire," she ordered, her voice like steel. Torpedoes launched, beams of light fired from human cannons. The darkness exploded with fire and steel. The first alien ship cracked apart, burning in silence. The bridge cheered, their fear forgotten. She had given them hope, but hope was fragile. The sensors showed wave after wave of enemy ships closing in. The human fleet had struck first, but the storm was only beginning. Her first officer whispered, "Captain, if this continues..." She cut him off, her eyes blazing. "If this continues, then history will remember us as the fleet that stood. Even if we fall, we will be the wall that breaks their tide." Her crew nodded, heart steady now. They believed her because she believed herself, and in the quiet fire of her soul, she knew one thing. She could not break, she could not bend, for behind her, far away, stood Earth. And Earth had no shield, but her. The battle roared louder, explosions flashing like lightning storms across the void. Every second was a gamble, every order a test, and at the heart of it the youngest captain stood unshaken. The alien commander sneered again over comms. "You will die, little captain. You will watch your fleet fall piece by piece." Ilara leaned close to the microphone, her voice cold and clear. "Then I will watch standing, not kneeling." The bridge fell silent. Her crew looked at her not as a child, not as an untested officer, but as their leader, the youngest captain in fleet. History, and maybe the last one standing. Firestorm in the void. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as the first clash began. Alien beams cut through the darkness, leaving trails of burning light behind them. Every screen on the Bridge of Valor's light flashed red warnings, alarms, blaring, the hull groaning under the storm. "Shields at 70%, shouted the tactical officer, his voice breaking with fear. Sparks flew across the floor as another enemy barrage slammed into their defenses. Still, Captain Ilara Vey did not flinch. She stood tall at the center, her voice commanding. "Hold formation, do not scatter," she ordered. Her words struck like iron, holding the fleet together while the enemy pressed hard. Dozens of alien ships swept forward, moving like predators, their weapons glowing with deadly fire. They had fought humans before, but never with such confidence. They believed this fight was already theirs. The galaxy had whispered that humans were weak, fragile, too young to stand against the great powers, but Ilara was determined to show them the truth. "Target their lead destroyer," she commanded, her eyes never leaving the tactical map. "All forward batteries, fire!" The void exploded. Human torpedoes streaking across space, energy beams lancing forward. The lead alien ship shuddered under the blast, fire consuming its midsection. The Bridge of Valor's light erupted in cheers, the crew shouting in triumph. A small victory, but a victory all the same. Ilara raised her hand, quieting them. "One ship is not enough," she said sharply, her eyes hard. "Remember why we fight. Remember Earth." Her words pulled their hearts back into focus. They fired again, and another alien frigate went down, torn apart in fire. But the price was high. On the side screens, Ilara saw 2 human ships vanish in flames, their signals cut off in seconds, casualties mounting. Her first officer muttered, his face pale. "They're pushing harder, Captain. We cannot win a war of numbers." Ilara's jaw tightened. She knew he was right. But she also knew something else. Numbers did not always win wars. She had studied history, Earth's old battles, the times when outnumbered armies fought not with size, but with will. "They think they have already won," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone. "Let us remind them who they are fighting." The enemy pressed forward, their flagship unleashing a wave of plasma that tore through another human cruiser. The explosion lit the void like a dying star, the debris spinning in silence. The comm crackled with the screams of dying men and women. The Bridge of Valor's light fell into a moment of silence, the weight crushing them. Ilara did not let it last. "Lock weapons on their carrier," she ordered, her voice sharp enough to break the fear. "Launch everything we have, now!" The ship lurched as torpedoes and cannons unleashed their fury. Other human ships followed her lead, focusing all fire on the massive alien carrier. For a moment, the void became fire itself, a storm of light and destruction. The alien carrier shook, its shields breaking apart, its engines exploding in a chain reaction. A thunderous cheer rose from the humans as the carrier split into 2, burning halves drifting apart like broken bones. The alien commander's voice cut across the comms, furious now. "You dare, child? You think your fragile ships can challenge us?" His words were venom, but Ilara answered calmly. "No," she said, her eyes burning. "I know they can." Her crew straightened, pride surging through their fear. They were not just fighting a war, they were fighting for every family, every city, every life waiting back on Earth, but the victory came at a price. The sensors flashed with urgent red. 4 more human ships destroyed, their signals gone. The fleet was bleeding, and the enemy still had overwhelming numbers. "Captain, if this continues, we will not last an hour," her first officer whispered. Ilara did not look at him, her eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. "Then we will make that hour count," she replied. Outside, the battle raged. Alien beams tore apart human ships, engines flaring, hulls cracking. Every second was a storm of fire and steel. But the youngest, Captain, did not yield. Her ship danced through the void, firing with deadly precision. She gave orders that defied common tactics. Unexpected turns, ambush angles using wreckage as shields. Every move cost them, but every move also struck deep into the enemy ranks. And for the first time, the aliens began to hesitate. Their formation wavered, their confidence cracked. They had thought this fight would be over in minutes. But here they were, facing one human captain who refused to break. Ilara's heart pounded as she watched her fleet crumble. Half of them were gone now, their signals silent. But the enemy had also lost more than they expected. She saw fear beginning to creep into their lines. She turned to her crew, her voice steady. "We are not finished," she said, "not while I breathe, not while this ship still moves." The bridge echoed with her strength. Her crew, bloodied but unbroken, answered as one. "Aye, Captain." The firestorm continued, the void a sea of burning wreckage. Humanity was bleeding, but they were still fighting. And at the heart of it all stood Ilara Vey, the youngest captain in fleet history, and still, somehow, unbroken. The breaking line. The bridge of Valor's light shook violently, sparks showering down as another enemy blast struck their shields. The alarm screamed louder than ever, the ship systems flashing red across every console. Still, Captain Ilara Vey stood tall, her eyes locked on the tactical display. "Shields. At 40%, shouted the tactical officer, panic rising in his voice. "Engine stability critical." Another called out. Every report was worse than the last. The line was breaking. The human fleet was falling apart, ship after ship burning in the void. Already, more than half their number was gone. The rest were damaged, running low on ammunition, struggling to hold formation. On the comms, voices of other captains came through, some begging for orders, others screaming as their ships tore apart. The sound was enough to shatter anyone's will, but Ilara forced herself to listen because every cry mattered, every voice belonged. To a human life she was sworn to protect. Her first officer looked at her, his face pale. "Captain, we cannot hold, the line will not last much longer." His words were desperate, but she did not answer right away. She walked slowly to the center of the bridge, her boots striking the metal floor with steady rhythm. Every pair of eyes followed her, waiting, hoping. Finally, she turned, her voice rising above the chaos. "We are the line. If we break, Earth falls. If we hold, even for one more moment, we give humanity a chance." The crew stiffened, their fear melting into something stronger. For a moment, their hands moved faster, their eyes sharper. Because if their captain would not give up, neither would they. The alien fleet pressed closer, their weapons burning brighter, their commander's voice cut across the comms again, filled with cruel amusement. "Still alive, little captain? You hold on to hope like a child holds on to toys, but hope will not save you. Watch as your fleet burns and know you are the cause." The insult struck deep. Some crew looked down, shame and fear clouding their faces. But Ilara leaned forward, her tone calm and sharp. "They think we are finished," she said, "so we show them what humans do when the end is near." Her hand sliced through the air. "All ships, converge fire on their flanking cruisers. Use the wreckage for cover. Strike from the shadows." The order was bold, reckless, but brilliant. Human ships moved into the drifting debris, hiding among the burning wrecks of their fallen allies. From the chaos, they launched a sudden counterattack, their weapons blazing like lightning in the storm. 2 alien cruisers exploded, torn apart before they could react. The void lit up with fire. For a brief moment, the humans turned the tide. The crew of Valor's Light cheered, but Ilara did not smile. She saw what the others did not. The alien flagship had turned, its weapons now aimed directly at them. The enemy had realized who was leading this resistance. They were no longer fighting the human fleet. They were hunting her. A shudder ran through the ship as the first strike from the flagship hit. The shields dropped to 20%. Panels burst apart, flames licking across the floor before being smothered by suppression systems. Direct hit from the flagship. The tactical officer cried, "We can't take another blast like that." Alara's heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "They want us? Then let them come, but we will not go quietly." She turned to her crew, meeting each pair of eyes with fire in her own. "They call me a child. They say I should not lead. Then let us show them what a child of Earth can do." The bridge roared with her words. No one doubted her now, not even for a breath. Outside, the alien fleet closed in tighter, their weapons focusing. One human destroyer exploded, then another. The line was no longer just breaking. It was shattering. On the display, only a handful of green signals remained. All around them was red, the enemy fleet pressing like an endless storm. Even her first officer, loyal as ever, whispered, "Captain, it's over." Alara turned slowly, her face calm but her eyes burning. "No," she said softly so that every crew member could hear. "It is not over while we still stand, and if this is the breaking line, then we will break with our fists raised, not our backs bent." The crew swallowed their fear, every hand gripping the consoles tighter. If this was to be the end, it would not be surrender, it would be defiance, carved into the stars. The alien commander's laughter echoed again. "You will fall, child. You will watch your last ships die, and then you will kneel." Alara stepped closer to the comms, her face lit by the fire of the burning void. Her voice was steady, sharp, unbroken. "I will never kneel," she said. "Not to you, not to anyone." And with that, she gave the order. "All ships, attack at will, bleed them until we can bleed no more." The void erupted again, human ships throwing themselves into the fire. Every blast, every strike was desperate but powerful. The line was breaking, yes. But in that breaking, legends were born, and at the very heart of it stood Alara Vey, the youngest captain in fleet history, facing the impossible, facing the galaxy itself, and refusing, with every breath, to bow. The last command. The void was filled with wreckage, the broken pieces of human ships drifting like graves in silence. Everywhere. Captain Alara Vey looked. She saw fire, shattered hulls, and fading signals. The fleet that had once stood proud was now gone, reduced to burning debris. On the tactical display, only one human ship remained. Valor's Light, her ship, her crew, her command. The youngest captain in fleet history was now the last captain of humanity still alive. The bridge was dark except for the flashing red alarms. The crew worked with bleeding hands and shaking voices. Still, they moved because she moved. Still, they believed because she believed. "Shields are gone," shouted the tactical officer. "Engines failing, weapons nearly empty." Another called out. It was the truth no one wanted to hear. They had no fleet left, no reinforcements, no chance. But Alara stood in the middle of the chaos like an unbroken pillar. Her uniform was torn, her face smeared with ash, but her eyes burned like fire. The enemy commander's voice returned on the comms, filled with cruel triumph. "Human child, it is finished. Your fleet is ash. Your people are broken. Surrender, and I may let your crew live." The bridge froze, waiting for her to speak. The offer hung in the air like a knife. Every officer stared at her, fear and hope mixing in their eyes. But Alara only straightened her back, her voice cold and steady. "No, we do not surrender. Not today, not ever." The enemy laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Then your deaths are on your hands, girl. You will watch your ship die piece by piece." Her first officer leaned closer, whispering urgently, "Captain, wait, we cannot fight them alone. Every system is failing, every weapon is nearly gone. What can we do?" Alara looked around the bridge, her gaze falling on every member of her crew. These were not just soldiers, they were people, tired, wounded, terrified people, and yet they stood with her. They had followed her through the firestorm, they had bled beside her. Now she owed them one last choice. Her voice softened, but her words cut through the silence. "Crew of Valor's Light, we are the last ship, the last shield between Earth and the enemy. We cannot surrender. We cannot run. But we can still choose how we fall." The crew straightened, their faces pale but steady. She continued, her eyes blazing. "This ship still has fire in her heart. We will not wait for death to come to us. We will carry the fight to them. One last command, one last strike. Let the galaxy remember humanity, not as victims but as warriors. Her words struck like thunder. The crew shouted back as one, "Aye, Captain." Even with death closing in, they were ready. Ilara turned to the helm. "Set course straight for their flagship," she ordered. The officer hesitated, his hands trembling. "Their flagship? But Captain, if we charge—" She cut him off with steel in her voice. "Then we go out as fire, not as ash." The ship lurched forward, its battered engines roaring one last time. On the display, the alien fleet shifted, suddenly alert. The commander's voice returned, now sharp with anger. "What are you doing, human? Stop this madness." Ilara answered with a thin, fierce smile. "This is not madness. This is humanity." The alien flagship loomed ahead, massive and terrible, its weapons glowing like suns. Compared to it, Valor's light was a broken blade. But even a broken blade can cut. "Arm all torpedoes, charge every cannon we have left," Ilara commanded. Her tactical officer replied, his voice steady for the first time that night. "Captain, we have only one full barrage left." "Then make it count," she said. The ship shook as alien fire slammed into them, tearing across their hull. Panels burst, smoke filled the bridge. Crew members fell but kept working. Every strike pushed them closer to destruction. But still, they charged. The enemy commander shouted again, now furious. "Stop. Do you think you can touch me with your broken ship?" Ilara's voice cut through the fire and chaos. "No. I think we can scar you forever." She raised her hand. "All weapons, fire." The void erupted. Every cannon, every torpedo, every last piece of fury unleashed. The barrage streaked across space, slamming into the alien flagship. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing through its shields. The massive ship groaned under the sudden assault, flames breaking across its hull. The crew of Valor's Light cheered through the smoke and fire. They had struck the heart of the beast. Even if they fell, their enemy would remember this night. But the alien fleet responded with rage. Thousands of weapons locked onto Valor's Light. The tactical display filled with red. Their death was seconds away. Ilara gripped the armrest of her chair, her voice calm, her eyes bright. "This is our last command. If we fall as one." The enemy's final barrage lit up the void. The ship shook with the fury of 1,000 suns. The crew held their breath. The last captain of humanity stood unbroken, and as the storm swallowed them, she whispered her final order. "Fight, until the very end." The unbroken spirit, the bridge of Valor's Light, was filled with smoke, sparks, and the smell of burned metal. Every surface glowed red from warning lights, and the crew worked with torn uniforms and bleeding hands. The ship was dying, but the spirit of its people was still alive. Captain Ilara Vey stood in the middle, one hand gripping the chair to steady herself. Her hair was loose, her face marked with dust and ash, but her eyes still burned like stars. "Captain, shields are gone." The tactical officer coughed. "Weapons nearly offline, life support failing." His voice cracked with despair. The words should have ended them, but they didn't. Ilara's gaze swept across the faces of her crew. Fear was there. Yes, but behind it burned something stronger. They were not broken, not yet, and she would not allow them to break. On the comms, the alien commander's voice cut through again, cruel and certain. "You are finished, child. Your ship is a corpse drifting in the void. Surrender now, and I may let you crawl away." Alive, the crew looked to Ilara, waiting. Would she finally give in? Would she finally say the word surrender? Instead, she smiled, faint but fierce. "No," she said, her voice like steel. "We are not finished. We are still here. And while we are here, humanity still fights." Her words struck the crew like a spark on dry wood. They straightened, their hands moving faster. Even the wounded rose from the floor to man their stations. The youngest captain had given them strength again. Ilara's first officer leaned closer, whispering urgently, "Captain, we cannot win this fight." She turned her eyes on him, steady and calm. "No," she said softly, "but we can make them bleed, and if we cannot outlive them, We can outlast them in memory. The alien fleet pressed closer. Their massive warships surrounded Valor's Light. Every weapon pointed at the broken human ship. The enemy wanted to end them in one final glorious blast, but Alara had one more plan. She had studied battles her whole life, and she knew sometimes victory was not survival, sometimes victory was defiance. Helm, she ordered, her voice strong. Take us straight into their formation, cut between their cruisers, aim for their flagship. The helm officer hesitated. Captain, that's suicide. Ilara's eyes blazed. No, that's honor. If we fall where they cannot forget us. The engines roared weakly, sparks trailing behind as the broken ship surged forward. The alien fleet adjusted, weapons firing. In a storm of light, every blast tore more metal from Valor's Light. The hull screamed, but the ship pressed on. On the bridge, the crew shouted over the alarms. Fire control offline. Engines failing. Hull breach on decks 4 and 6. Still, Alara's voice rose above the chaos. Hold your stations. We are not done yet. The alien commander's voice came again, filled with fury. You are insane. Do you think one dying ship can defeat us? Alara answered with calm defiance. No, but one ship can remind you that humanity does not kneel, and that will haunt you forever. Her words echoed across every open channel. Every alien listening heard them. Every human survivor across the stars would remember them. The enemy flagship glowed ahead, its weapons charged, its size dwarfing them. It was a monster in the void, but Valor's Light kept moving. A wounded blade, but still sharp, Captain. Weapons ready for one last volley, the tactical officer said. Ilara nodded, her voice steady. Then aim for their heart. Her crew looked at her, tired but proud, even knowing this was there, and they smiled, because their captain was unbroken and so were they. The alien flagship unleashed its fury. The void lit up, fire tearing across Valor's Light. Panels burst, flames spread, and the hull cracked apart. But in the middle of the storm, Ilara stood tall. She turned to her crew, her voice calm and fierce. This is not the end of us. This is the beginning of our legend. Let them remember that humanity did not surrender, that humanity did not break. Her hand rose. All weapons, fire. The last barrage streaked across the void, torpedoes and energy blasts slamming into the alien flagship. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing through armor. Flames erupted, the massive ship groaning under the strike. The bridge shook, violently. Valor's Light was breaking apart. But cheers still rose from the crew as they watched the enemy flagship burn. For the first time, the alien commander's voice cracked. You dare, human! His fury was drowned out by the sound of his ship tearing apart. On her dying ship, Captain Alara Vey stood unbroken, her eyes locked on the burning enemy flagship. Her voice whispered one final promise. You will never forget us, not while the stars still shine. And though her ship burned, her spirit burned brighter. The youngest captain, the last one standing, the unbroken heart of humanity. The last battle. The void was fire. Broken ships drifted like corpses, and the stars themselves seemed to vanish behind smoke and burning wreckage. In the middle of it all, one ship still moved. Valor's Light, cracked, bleeding, but not yet. Silent. The bridge was chaos. Flames licked across the ceiling, wires sparked, consoles shattered. Crew members struggled to hold their stations, coughing through smoke, blood on their faces. Yet none of them left their posts, because their captain still stood. Alara Vey gripped the railing near her chair, her uniform burned, one sleeve torn, blood trailing down her arm. But her eyes were steady cold fire burning in them. She was the youngest captain in fleet history, and now she was humanity's last fighter. Captain, shouted the helm officer. Engines at 5%, we'll lose them any moment. Captain, cried the tactical officer. Weapons nearly empty, torpedo bays destroyed. Every report was another death knell, but Alara did not bend. They think we are finished, she said, her voice calm, cutting through the noise. They think this is the end of humanity's fight, but let us show them that even in our last breath we strike. The crew's faces hardened. They were exhausted, broken, but her words lit fire in their hearts. They had already accepted death, but now Death would have meaning. The alien fleet pressed closer, thousands of weapons locked onto the Valor's light. The enemy wanted to erase them utterly, to leave no trace. The enemy commander's voice filled the comms, mocking and furious. You still resist. You are nothing. One broken ship against an empire, you will die and no one will remember your name. Alara leaned close to the microphone, her voice cold as ice. My name is Alara Vey, captain of the Valor's Light, and every star will remember me. Her words spread across the comms, open for all to hear. Not just her crew, not just the enemy, but every listening ear across the galaxy. And in that moment, the legend was born. Target their flagship engines, she ordered sharply. Divert all remaining power to weapons, even if it drains life support. The tactical officer hesitated, then nodded. Aye, Captain. The crew moved fast, their hands flying over controls, their eyes sharp. Every one of them knew this was their last strike, but they would make it count. The alien flagship loomed ahead, scarred from their earlier attack, but still powerful. Its weapons glowed brighter, preparing the killing blow. If they fired, Valor's light would be gone in a heartbeat, but Alara was faster. All weapons, fire. The last cannons of Valor's light roared. Energy beams slashed across space. Torpedoes streaked through the dark. The enemy flagship shuddered as explosions rippled across its engines. Fire consumed its rear sections, tearing through its systems. For the first time, the alien commander's voice was shaken. Impossible. Alara didn't let him finish. Nothing is impossible for humanity, she said. And her crew cheered, even as fire spread across their own bridge. The alien fleet turned all fire onto them. The void lit up as thousands of beams cut through space. The first barrage smashed into Valor's light. The ship groaned, metal ripping apart, decks collapsing. Captain, hull breaches on every level, shouted the engineer. We can't hold much longer, Alara nodded, calm even as the ship died around her. Then we hold until the very last second. The alien flagship, crippled but still alive, struggled to move. The damage had slowed it, its massive guns flickering with failing power. It was wounded but not destroyed. Alara's first officer turned to her, desperation in his eyes. Captain, we've given everything. But it's not enough. We can't finish them. Alara's gaze hardened. Then we give more, she said. Her eyes swept across the bridge, her voice rising for all to hear. Crew of Valor's Light, this is our moment. We may fall, but we will take them with us. Prepare for ramming speed. The bridge went silent for a heartbeat, then every voice shouted as one. Aye, Captain. The engines screamed as the ship turned, every last piece of power poured into its core. The Valor's Light surged forward, broken but blazing with one final purpose. The alien flagship filled the display, looming larger and larger. The enemy. Commander screamed across the comms, No, you wouldn't dare. But Alara's voice cut through his rage. I dare because I am human. The distance closed. 10,000 meters, 5,000, 2,000. Every alarm blared. Every console flashed. The ship was tearing itself apart from the strain. But still it moved. Alara gripped the railing, her voice soft but fierce. This is the last battle. Let the galaxy remember it forever. The alien flagship fired one desperate barrage. The blasts tore through Valor's Light, ripping its hull into fragments, but the engines held for just one last surge. With a roar of fire and steel, the human ship slammed forward. The impact lit the void like a star being born. The alien flagship shuddered, fire erupting across its body, systems collapsing. The explosion rippled through the alien fleet, scattering them in chaos. The bridge of Valor's Light shook violently. Alara's crew held on, some crying, some laughing, and in the middle of it all, their captain stood unbroken, her voice steady even as the walls crumbled. We are humanity and we do not fall quietly. The captain's legacy. The void was no longer silent, it burned with fire, wreckage drifting across endless space. The great alien fleet that had once marched forward with arrogance was now broken, scattered, and afraid, and at the heart of that, chaos lay the shattered remains of a single human ship, Valor's Light, the youngest captain's ship, the last defender of Earth. The collision had torn both ships apart. The alien flagship burned like a dying star, its engines crippled, its weapons silent. It was not destroyed. But it was broken, and that single wound had forced the rest of the enemy fleet to scatter in fear. On what was left of the bridge, the crew struggled to breathe through smoke and flames. Half the consoles were gone, the floor cracked, the ceiling open to the stars, but still some of them lived, clinging to their stations, refusing to let go. At the center stood Captain Ilara Vey, her body weary, her uniform scorched, her face streaked with ash and blood, but her eyes were still alive, burning with the same unbroken fire that had carried them through the storm. "Captain," her first officer whispered, his voice weak. "Life support failing. We don't have long." Ilara nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving the stars outside. "I know," she said softly, "but we gave them something they'll never forget." The comm crackled with fragments of alien transmissions. Their voices no longer mocking, no longer confident. They were filled with fear, anger, confusion. One human ship had scarred their fleet. One human captain had stood against an empire. And though Ilara's ship was dying, her spirit had already won. She turned to her crew, those who still breathed, her voice calm, steady, carrying across the broken bridge. "You fought like giants tonight. You proved that humanity does not bow, does not run. Even in our last breath we rise." Tears filled the eyes of her officers. They were ready to die, but they were proud to die under her command because she had turned their fear into fire, because she had shown them that even the weakest moment could become a legend. The ship groaned again, metal tearing, the last engines fading into silence, stars drifted outside, uncaring, eternal. But in that silence, Ilara spoke once more, her voice quiet, almost like a prayer. "If humanity survives this war, let them know what happened here. Let them know that one ship stood, that one crew fought, that one captain refused to break." Her first officer lowered his head, whispering, "They will know, Captain. I swear it." The light around them dimmed, systems shutting down one by one. The cold of space crept closer. Yet no one looked away. No one closed their eyes in fear. They looked at their captain, and they saw strength. And with her, they felt no shame in dying. The last breath of valor's light came in a whisper of sparks, the ship finally falling still. But across the galaxy, the echo of its fight spread like wildfire. Human survivors on distant outposts whispered the name Ilara Vey. Allied species who had once doubted humanity now spoke of courage and fire. Even enemies admitted in hushed tones that the child captain had scarred their pride. The story, carried from ship to ship, from world to world. And long after the wreckage of valor's light was swallowed by the void, her words remained. "We are humanity, and we do not fall quietly." Generations later, cadets in Earth's new fleet would stand at attention, their instructors telling them of the youngest captain, the last one standing, the unbroken. Statues were built in her honor, songs were written, but none of it captured the true image as clearly as those who had been there. Her crew, her family, who survived long enough to tell the tale. For them, she was not just a legend. She was the captain who stood on a burning bridge, who faced the galaxy, and did not bow, who gave them courage when all hope was gone. And in the deep silence of space, her legacy lived on, not just as the youngest captain in fleet history, not just as the last one standing, but as the unbroken heart of humanity. The galaxy would never forget her, and humanity would never kneel again.